So welcome everyone. This is the final webinar of our series. All through April, May and June, we have hosted several interesting webinars, and this will be the final one about our tool, the RPA-Cube. If you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and take it away. You can also ask your question in the chat box. I'll keep an eye out on the group chat to make sure that your question is answered. And you can ask your question in English or Dutch. We can always help to translate if that helps. We are going to do the webinar together. Richard is the main speaker, so to say, today. But I'd also like to introduce myself. We've created a special slide to introduce me also. So for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Marianne Pantjes and I'm 28. I live in Amsterdam, where the birds are beautifully singing at the moment. And I study art history, actually, first in Middelburg and then in London. And I'm now a senior project manager at Human Insight. And I have this special focus at the moment on developing the RPA-Cube further. So that's why I am in this webinar as well today. And so I'm also an art historian, and this is a bit of shameless self-promotion, but my first exhibition will be opening next year, September, in Stedelijk Museum Alkmaar. So please do come and see. I enjoy everything that is to do with arts and culture, but I have quite a broad interest in that sense. And lastly, I'd like to say, in this context of the RPA-Cube, I'm very thankful that Richard looked at my result areas and personality rather than my unusual art history profile when he hired me to be his project manager. And we'll learn more about how to use the RPA-Cube for recruitment as we go along. So one last thing to mention is that this video will, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be shared with you as part of the follow-up along with other goodies. Richard, can I give the floor to you now?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for joining us today as well, helping us A, to host this webinar, and also B, to take us through an interesting business case a little later on. So really good to be doing this one together. I also want to give a quick shout out to our other HI colleagues, Zeldi and Karina, who made this entire webinar series possible. Thank you for all your time and effort and stress in creating this entire series and helping us through this corona crisis by just helping us bringing ideas together. And of course, thanks to all the partners who participated in these and provided their insights in making this possible. So I look back on a really successful series, and I think we made the most out of that. So thank you all for doing something great together. Today we're going to talk about an instrument that a lot of people ask us a lot of questions about, the RPA-Cube. It is fully operational. It is being used in practice on an ever larger scale, but for a lot of people, it is still a little bit obscure in what it does exactly. And that is what we want to shed some more light on today. I'm going to skip over this one. For everyone who wants to read my introduction, my profile, once again, feel free to, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now. I think I know everyone in this, this webinar. So the RPA-Cube focuses on an extremely important topic, which is finding the right talent for your team or organization. Or looking at it from the other side, finding the right job, the right function that fits your talent, that fits your natural preference. And just to start things off, Marianne and myself want to do a little bit of an interactive exercise. So feel free to join in here and speak up if you want to, if you have an insight or an idea. Now, I'm just gonna see how Zoom does this. because I need to share a different screen here. So bear with me for a moment.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, can you see it?
Yeah, we see the job vacancies.
Perfect, perfect, great. So what we're gonna discuss first is something that we see on a regular basis. We're gonna take a look at 2 or 3 job descriptions from the English jobs, like national job site, where they post job descriptions and where you can apply to find a new job or function. And in a nutshell, what the RPA-Cube serves to do is being the mirror image of the AIM-Cube. So it helps you to identify the result areas that are in a function profile and connect them to the right talents to fulfill those result areas and deliver the required results. And as a little exercise, like I said, we're going to take a look first at this job description here. This is from Slater and Gordon. It was actually posted today. This is a live website that we're looking at. And it revolves around a senior operations manager. Now, I'm going to skip through the introduction here, talking about what their company is about and why it's an awesome company to work at. We're going to take a look at the responsibilities for this function profile. And I want to ask you, just based purely on gut feel, look at these responsibilities in AIM-Cube terminology and give us your feeling of where these responsibilities fit in the AIM-Cube. So let's start with this one. I'll just take out 2 or 3 here. Management and leadership of circa 100 strong team of outbound and inbound case handlers against key KPIs and SLAs. Is that more of a specialist function or more of a generalist integrative function? What would you say? Anyone wants to venture a guess? Generalist. Thank you, Janneke. And can you just elaborate on that just a little bit? What makes you make that first or get that first impression? Thank you, Paul. Yes. So management and leadership.
Are you asking me a question?
Yes. Yeah, please.
Well, I think so many people to work with, to have the normal, I think the business as usual going strong. I don't think it needs a specialist. I think you need to
so
be strong in overseeing and not very much into details, I think.
I agree. Thank you for that. Thank you. Absolutely. Perfect answer. And I like Paul's answer as well, connecting all the different stakeholders, connecting everyone involved. I think most of us would agree, right? A rather generalist contribution is required for that responsibility. Let's take a look at a second one here. Owning the overall customer experience to ensure efficiencies, etc., etc. Owning the overall customer experience. Is that more relationship focused or more content focused? Just gut feel, what would you say? Whilst providing a best-in-class service to customers. Relationship, right? I think most of us would agree on that one. So we've got a position here, just on gut feel, we can see something take shape here. Generalist function, pretty relationship focused. Finally, let's take a look at this one. Creating and driving forward transformation and change across the department to continue to deliver a best-in-class service. Creating and driving forward transformation and change across the department to continue to deliver a best-in-class service. Thinking about the final dimension in the AIM-Cube, is that more exploratory or more optimizing, more consolidating? Anyone wants to venture a guess here? Creating and driving forward transformation and change. Interesting, thank you. Harry? Sustaining innovation. Ah, right. So it's more about keeping an eye on the transformation, making sure processes are enabled to make that continuous. Is that right?
Yeah, the level of innovation that is applied is just improving the existing strength of the business. And you're trying to be top notch, and you're not coming up with new mixes of basic values against which you can compete or go into new directions.
I love that. Yeah, great, great, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, perfect, perfect. So the first thing that we see here is that basically what is written here is an in-Cube position in crypto code, right? It's sort of it needs a translation to get to these concrete result areas, to get to a position where you can start to identify people with the right natural contributions and have an honest dialogue with them based on the results that need to be delivered. And that is what the RPA-Cube does. It offers that translation between job profiles like this and functional, performance-driven results areas and the talents or preferences that are needed of them. I just want to show you another one. This is, of course, the first one that we're looking at, just very briefly, because I think we get the idea here. If we're looking at a customer service expert, there are 3 key responsibilities here. Elevating the customer experience, demonstrate kindness and share your product knowledge with each customer, build trust and connect with your fellow teammates. All right? I think, based on our experience so far, most of us would agree that a job profile like this aligns very well with contributions in the in-Cube towards the left back quadrant. Relationship focused, optimizing, focused on providing service and supporting clients through those processes. Again, that is what the RPA-Cube is designed to do as a solution. So I want to take you back to the presentation here. Let's see how that works. I think I got it here. Yeah, can everyone see the slide deck again? Perfect, thank you. So the RPA-Cube is a methodology that enables you to visualize the critical performance aspects of a function and match these to people's performance contributions. RPA here stands for Result Positioning Area. Therefore, the RPA-Cube is meant to position different result areas in the cube. Positions that are measured by the RPA-Cube can then be compared to people's natural contributions as measured by the in-Cube. What we mean here is that the RPA-Cube uses the exact same visual as the in-Cube. It uses the same paradigm, it uses the same constructs and dimensions, and it uses the same visuals for positioning these result areas. Once you have identified those, you can then lay them next to people's in-Cube profiles and align these perfectly and have an honest dialogue about that. So how does the RPA-Cube add value? The RPA-Cube adds value to the recruitment process in 3 different ways. The first one is by mapping the required contribution to complete the necessary result areas and creating common understanding about what is really necessary for this function to be a success. Now, what I mean by this is, let's say you have a team of 5 people who are looking to recruit new talent for their team, okay? And let's say they are talking about hiring a new sales manager or a new business analyst. In order for this function to be a success and to be a valuable contribution to the team, the very first thing that needs to happen is that everybody has the exact same picture of what they mean by a sales manager. Do they mean someone who just starts cold calling new potential clients? Or do they mean someone who adds a meaningful contribution to the strategic dialogue from a sales perspective? These are two fundamentally different contributions. And when you start to find new talents for your team, you better make sure that everybody is aware of what you're actually looking for, right? So that's the first one. Once people get their heads around and start the dialogue about, well, wait a second, what is it that we need? Only then can you start looking for the right talents, okay? Then the RPA-Cube visualizes these distinct result areas that are part of the function sales manager. Now, one thing that you very often see in function profiles online and offline is that they basically require a person to do everything that they can think of, right? So sales manager, you have to generate sales, worthy of €1 million a year. You have to build a long-term sales pipeline. You have to educate new sales trainees. You have to oversee the financial documentation. You have to oversee the legal ramification of new customers, etc., etc. By using the RPA-Cube, you can then visualize each and every one of these different result areas and see whether they cluster so they can be fulfilled by one person, or if they are simply too far apart and should be fulfilled by multiple people instead. And finally, once you have that picture, you can then align that with the in-Cube profiles of potential candidates to have that meaningful dialogue. And I want to emphasize here in one thing, and I'll come back to this later in the presentation. You will never, ever hear me say that you can hire someone based purely on the in-Cube profile. Rather, this is the starting point of a meaningful level dialogue between team or organization and potential candidates, right? That's what I'll come back to in a little bit. So where does the RPA-Cube add value? It adds value for everyone involved with performance-related topics in recruitment and advisory settings. So on the one hand, you've got your coaches, your consultants, your recruiters. On the other hand, when it comes to visualizing existing functions in an organization, it's useful for HR employees and advisors. But on the other side of the coin, it is equally useful for professionals applying for a job, because it can help them visualize, well, wait a second, this is my natural contribution. What kind of function really aligns with my natural contribution, right? So it gives them the tools to start that meaningful dialogue with a team or an organization. Any question up to this point? Any questions? Before we go into the technical parts of the RPA-Cube. No? All right, then we will continue here. So the RPA-Cube, it follows a rather straightforward process. I wrote down easy or simple, but it should say straightforward, because there are some skills required in this. You need to think things through. The first step is the result areas need to be defined, okay? The result areas need to be defined. And there are some things to be kept in mind here that we'll take a look at in a moment. But first thing, the result areas need to be defined. Then these result areas are used to generate the RPA questionnaires. After that, the participants fill in the questionnaires, one questionnaire per result area. So let's say you have a function like the one we just saw, has 3 key result areas. That means that everyone involved, so if the team is 5 people looking for a 6th, every one of those 5 people would fill in 3 RPA questionnaires, right? Everybody fills it in on each of the result areas. And finally, the results are analyzed to write the function profile and if possible, compared to the N-cubes of potential candidates. Okay, again, starting the dialogue rather than picking the right one off the bat there. So what does the RPA-Cube look like? Here are some sample questions in the questionnaire itself. So the RPA-Cube has 30 items, taking about 6 to 8 minutes to fill in, especially once you've done it a couple times, it's usually more about 6 minutes. They are exactly the same in structure as the N-Cube, so they are two-sided with 6 answer possibilities dividing them. And they are, like I said, answering a question on 3 familiar constructs: attachment, exploration, and managing complexity. So the first one, attachment, as you can see, they ask questions like, to achieve the desired outcomes of this result area, it is more important to interact rationally with others than it is to have an emotional bond with them. You can imagine if it's about an auditing department studying the financial data of the team or organization, probably the most important is the rational dialogue between team members. On the other hand, to achieve the desired outcomes of this result area, it is more important to have an emotional bond with others than it is to interact rationally with them. So let's say an internal business coach working with HR, overseeing the development and functioning of professionals within the team or organization. You can imagine that the emotional bond is most important, establishing trust and a sense of belonging with people. In exploration, outcomes emerging from this result area can be characterized by words such as stability, predictability, etc., more on the optimizing side, or explorative, innovative, transformative, new, right? What are the outcomes? So an R&D department, probably more exploratory, innovative. Auditing department, again, probably more stable or predictable. Finally, focus for benefit delivery from this result area is the short or medium term, so more tactical, more specialist in nature, or more medium long term, more strategic, more overseeing, or more generalist, if you will, right? So that gives you a bit of a feel of what the actual questionnaire looks like. Keep in mind, if a couple of people are going to fill this in, oftentimes they'll have to fill it in 6 or 7 questionnaires if there are that many result areas. So it's something to keep in mind with the time obligation of people. Usually takes about 40 to 60 minutes for them to fill it in total. Wait a second. I'm looking at so I'm taking you now to a Dutch presentation, which obviously is not what I wanted here. Just gonna switch to this one. This will make it much easier, especially for our American guests today, to follow. So when it comes, I already mentioned, when it comes to defining result areas, that is slightly more complicated than it might look at first glance. So let's take a look at what a result area is not. All right, so defining a successful result area starts by looking at what a result area is not. A result area is not a function. So for instance, we just looked at senior operations manager. That is not a result area, okay? Rather, a function always consists of multiple result areas. Ideally, about 5 to 7. That's sort of like the sweet spot. If a result area only has, or a function only has one result area, you create this extremely monotonous function, which can become very boring very fast. If, on the other hand, you create a function of 9 or 10 or 11 different result areas, you're gonna overload people with different responsibilities. You're gonna steer them on a fast track to burnout. A result area is not an activity, okay? A result area usually consists of one or multiple activities. Now, this is something that a lot of people, teams, and organizations make a mistake in. So they'll say that, for instance, billing clients is a successful result area, but rather that is a continuous activity. The difference here, and that is critical, is a result area, as the name implies, always leads to a given result rather than a continuous activity. So a result area, it can contain multiple activities, but the result should be the same of each of these activities. Okay, so if the result area is, for instance, and I'm thinking off the top of my head here, but if it is to create a trustworthy environment where people can flourish, okay? Let's say you're looking for someone, an HR manager, to create a trustworthy environment where people can flourish, okay? You have a number of activities that can contribute to this result area, but there is a clear result that is to be delivered, which is a trustworthy environment, all right? So a result area is not the same as an activity. And also, finally, a result area is not a specific target, okay? A result area indicates the result that has to be delivered, and that can have multiple targets that can flow from this. So for instance, generating 10,000 euros in sales, it's a target, okay? Not a result area. A result area could be generating a sustainable pipeline of sales, okay? And you can connect different targets on that depending on, you know, the seniority of the salespeople working with it, the market conditions, you name it. So you can have that result area, building a sustainable pipeline, and then you can have, for one person, you know, a sales target of 10,000 euros, and another can have a sales target of 100,000 euros, but they are contributing to the same result area. Is this clear so far? Any questions on this? No? All right, perfect. So having taken a look at what a result area is not, let's take a look at what a result area is. A result area, as the name indicates, it states a result that needs to be delivered for the team or organization. So it has a defined end. It has something that people can come together about and say, yes, that result area, that has been delivered, that was successful, okay? If you cannot have that discussion, the result area is too vague, okay? So if people talking about a trustworthy environment, once everybody says, yes, looking back 6 months ago, looking where we are now, we all feel that we are at a much closer position. We see that that's happening. We agree on that. Then it's a success. But you have to be able to come together on that. It is real and visible. Okay, and by real and visible, I don't mean that you always need to be able to see it with, you know, with your eyes, but it has to be something that people agree on, that yes, this has delivered tangible results for the organization. Just talked about a trustworthy environment, but you can also say something, for instance, like creating a loyal client base. Okay, it's not something you can immediately see, but everybody agrees, yes, it's real and the results are visible. It answers the question what it is that you or someone else needs to contribute, what it is that you or someone else is paid for, what the reason for this function is. So monitoring quality, it is an activity, right? And people could intuitively say, yeah, okay, so there is a reason for this to be there, but I'm not paying anyone to just monitor quality, right? That's an ongoing activity. I need a result to be connected to that activity. Why are we looking to monitor quality? Is it to create happier, more satisfied customers? Is it to avoid legal consequences, right? Is it to generate revenue in the long term? There are multiple result areas that monitoring quality can contribute to, and that's what we're interested in, okay? We identify the result area, and then we look at the activities that are associated with that. It has to be clear, specific, and measurable without mentioning that specific number. So as soon as you go, okay, generating 100,000 in sales, that's a number, that is a target. Then you've become too focused on that target. However, generating again that sustainable sales pipeline, that is, it's clear. It is specific because everybody can look at this and say, yeah, okay, we've got clients for the next year or so. We have these many clients. This is a successful result, all right? And then you can connect targets to it. And finally, it can be done by one individual and it will generate tangible value for the team or organization. This is the second to last, I'm sorry. So it has to be able to be done by one individual. Otherwise, what you get is a sort of a mission statement for a whole department or an organization. When you're looking at result areas, it has to be concise enough that one person can generate value for the team or organization. And finally here, it is an essential part of the team or organization, not a nice to have. So once you're, when you're looking at critical result areas, what would be a nice to have here is delivering a smile on everyone's faces. I would say, okay, yeah, making people feel good and optimistic is a good one, but putting a smile on everyone's face, I would say that's more of a nice to have in the office. And that just completely misses the point of having a result area, obviously, when talking about getting new people to the team or organization. So to formulate, and we're going to practice this on the next slide, to formulate a successful result area, every result area needs a verb that indicates a start and an ending, okay? A start and ending. I'll come back to this in a moment. It needs to have a tangible deliverable, okay? Because once you're sitting down with a potential candidate, it needs to be extremely clear what the two of you are talking about. And this is what I referred to earlier in the presentation. When you're using the RPA-Cube or the concepts therein, of course, you can use the questionnaire, but you can use these concepts as well in your dialogue, of course. When you're sitting down with a potential candidate and you like the candidate in every respect, but their N-Cube is completely different from the defined result areas, right? That can happen. And in fact, it often will happen. Like I said, what you don't want to do is throw the resume in the trash and look for the next one, or just, send him or her out the door. No, what you want to do is you want to start talking about the deliverables. You want to start having this discussion about, we are very interested in your skills, in your character. We like you very much. Your performance profiles indicated by the N-Cube shows a different preference than what we are looking for in this result area. And then you can ask the question, if we are going to work together, then 6 months from now, we are going to evaluate you on these deliverables. And the question to the candidate then becomes, do you think you are, one, able to deliver on those? And two, perhaps even more important, are you willing to deliver on those? Because if a result area is way far from someone's natural contribution, then that person can also start thinking, maybe this isn't the optimal job function or result area for me to flourish in. That is what we mean by having that honest dialogue. And that is why it is so critical to have that tangible deliverable in that result area. And finally, it needs to have a reason for being. So why does it deliver value? And like I said, we're going to practice with that in a moment. So it needs to have a verb, needs to have a deliverable, and it needs to have a reason for being. So let's take a look briefly at verbs that are useful for result areas. And these are just some examples, right? These are all verbs that have a clear start point and a discernible end point, okay? To craft, to design, to establish, to fund, to generate. Every one of these, it has a starting point and they deliver something. So these are awesome RPA verbs, right? Poor RPA verbs are verbs like to be, to begin, to do, to grow. They are, of course, very helpful in the discussion, you know, in the recruitment discussion in the bigger picture. But looking purely at the result areas, these are more start and continuing, you know, indefinitely. Okay, so to be mindful, to do quality control. They indicate an activity rather than a start and end point. Okay, so when you're looking at these verbs, try to form them using these awesome RPA verbs, right, that clearly indicate a deliverable. Having said that, let's just practice with a couple of them. Okay, so we have a couple of activities and we're going to formulate proper result areas from them. So here are some of these activities, and I want to ask people to join in. So either unmute yourself or share a suggestion in the chat. Let's start with that first one. I already mentioned it. Billing clients, at least I mentioned the activity. So billing clients could be an activity that, well, yeah, it needs to be done, but it is a continuous activity. Could you think of a proper result area looking at that activity? So I'll give you a minute or so. Think about that. Please, if you have an idea, speak up or share it in the chat. And remember, this is just an exercise here, so don't feel afraid to make a mistake here. Establish a team that is able to, yes, I like that. I like that. Again, this has a good verb, so establishing, it indicates a starting point, and you can measure when that is a success, for sure. Yeah. That is able to, yeah. So one, thank you, Javi, for the suggestion. I think we can add this basically to the end of that. Delivering clean bills to clients, okay? Delivering clean bills to clients. So delivering is a verb with a start and an end point. Clean bills is a tangible, yeah, deliver a system that can bill clients despite. I like that. I think that comes very close to this one, yes. Delivering clean bills to clients, increase client satisfaction rate about our after-sales service. Very good, very good. Yeah, I like that one. And increase, I would probably say something like deliver client satisfaction or deliver a high client satisfaction rate, because that even more indicates an endpoint. To ensure that invoices are delivered to clients in a timely manner. Like that one a lot. Yes, for sure, for sure. Notice that all of these suddenly translate a continuous activity into something that adds tangible value to the team or organization. All right. Next one, selling to clients. Selling to clients. Does anyone have a suggestion for that one? What is the result area that you can connect to this one? Anyone want to offer a suggestion there? I'll give you about 30 seconds and then I'll pull it up on the screen here. You can also write along and so I saw a lot of people writing. I don't see any suggestions in the chat, so I'll just pull it up here. Creating a loyal client base. Again, why are you selling to clients? Is it because selling to clients doesn't involve a why? Why does it add value, right? Is it to just bring in money? Well, maybe for some companies in the end, But what is really happening here is you want to make people happy. You want people to be satisfied. Transforming selling operations into. I like that one. I think that's more of a change agent, but that is a definite result area formulated very well. So I'll just take you through the last two here, looking at the time as well. Deliver service, solving client problems to create long-term loyalty. Okay, delivering service, again, it's an activity, but it doesn't say anything about how you're generating value for the team or the organization. Deliver service. I mean, we can pull from this, you know, we can form a picture, but that's not a common picture. That is not a clear endpoint. Solving client problems to create long-term loyalty. That is something that you can work with and that people can gather around. And finally, to create an educated and motivated workforce, just gonna move through this a little bit quicker because I want to take you to the real cases. We can split that into two because that uses a good verb to create an educated and motivated workforce, but it leaves a lot of things very vague and diffuse, right? However, to create a workforce motivated to support our customer drive, that suddenly becomes very tangible. That creates a result area that people can recognize, can gather around. And finally, to create a workforce educated to deal with our international clients, again, creates a start point and an end point so everybody can agree on, yes, this is a success or not, right? And why do we need it? To deal with our international clients, okay? So it creates a start and an end point. It has a tangible, a workforce that is motivated or a workforce that is educated, and it offers a reason for being there. Those are clean, proper result areas. Is this clear enough for now? And obviously we're just talking about a brief introduction here. Does this create a bit of a picture of what we're talking about? Any questions? No? Going once, going twice? All right. And I want to take you to a real life case that we did. Here are some of the result areas for the function of financial director. Okay, so what you can see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is really on the upper end, right? Probably a bit too much. You'd rather see 6 or 7 here, but 8, we'll go with it. These were identified by the organization itself, so by the clients. The client's looking for a new financial director, and they identified these 8 result areas as being critical for the function to be a success, okay? So I wanna look at 2. I wanna look at the red one and the gray one. And why? I'll show you right now. After filling in the RPA questionnaire on these 8 result areas, these were the result areas that were defined here, okay? So a few things really stand out. You'll see a big cluster of result areas in one corner. And I said I wanted to look at red and gray. So red, for instance, consolidating budgets from BUs, business units, into the corporate budget planning. All right, so consolidating budgets, well, it says it in the term already. It's on the consolidating side, optimizing side. It is highly content driven. It's a very rational subject. And in this case, it's pretty specialist. So left front specialist here. Most of these are clustered very closely together. So these 7 result areas could probably be done pretty well by one person. However, the odd one out is this one, the gray one here. Negotiates with outside financial agencies to achieve competitive contract, service, loan, and credit terms. Okay, so now you've suddenly got a result area that is much more, as you can see, on the people side of things, right? Communicating with others, taking a competitive stance, being more assertive, looking for new opportunities. Completely different result area, probably better done by someone else. So here you've got a function that should probably be split up in 2. That's clear how to read this one. And you can see now that once you have a picture like this, how you can align that with AIM-Cube profiles of potential candidates. And vice versa, if you are looking for a job or helping someone to look for a job, you can look at the function description, identify the result areas, and then visually plot them into the RPA-Cube to find that alignment as well. Okay, so here's another example, and then I'll hand it over to Marjan. The result areas for the function of marketing manager. Now this we like.
Sorry, Richard, before you go on, can I pose you one question?
Yeah, for sure.
Suppose you hire a new man or woman on this job, and say 3 to 4 years have gone well with him or her.
Yeah.
But after that period, this task or this result area is fulfilled.
Yeah.
What after that?
Very good, very good. So I wanted to put it to the group, but just looking at the time, I'll give my thinking on that. If the result area has been completely fulfilled, right, then both organization and employee will agree on that. Okay, so they agree on that. Yes, this has been fulfilled. We've done a successful job. So this function has been a worthwhile investment of both the time of the employee and the organization. Then there are several options. The best one, I think, is to look at, well, what other result areas in the organization are there that align well with this person's contribution, right? Because he or she knows the organization, knows the culture, knows the people there, knows the mission, etc. So that would be the very first one. If there are no result areas that align with that person, you can have the discussion if they want to shift in the cube, so take a different contribution or fulfill a different role, right? And that brings us to the discussion of the elastic band on how long are you willing to do that. Yeah. Again, then you can measure the success of that result area. And finally, and I can guarantee you this, if there are no other result areas that align with this person's talent, separating ways will be much more constructive in this scenario than in any other scenario. Why? Because both organization and employee will come to that agreement, can then state that in time and can help each other, find their different ways. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes very much sense. And it would be wise perhaps to embed that during the first talks already.
Yes, yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I agree on that. So you can identify a clear endpoint for this function, and then talk about next steps, either as a development of this function or a different function, or look into where can this employee move towards next. So yeah, agree with that. Thank you. Good question. So this one we like, 6 result areas. Here they are plotted in the RPA-Cube. A little bit more diffuse. I'd say this is still possible. You have a bit of a bigger spread here, but still very much towards that right back quadrant, slightly more operational focus. Looking at it, the 2 odd ones out are probably orange and red, that are definitely less exploratory than the other result areas, which you can probably recognize in the result areas as well. Deliver a marketing info system to deliver daily actionable information. Very much focused on the operational side of things, and deliver a consistent brand visibility and popularity, also much more in the here and now, okay? And the other ones, at least as they identified in, are more exploratory by nature. Now, I should point out that if a different team fills these in, of course, you can have a different RPA-Cube spread. It's just how do these people look at their result areas? What are they looking for in a potential new candidate there? Okay. So looking at this, and this one is a case that we actually helped them by, and we actually found a new marketing manager who was somewhere in this area. All right, so having said that, I want to hand it over to Marjan to take us through a real life business case that we just finished. Marja.
Yes, I should unmute.
Yes.
Well, it was last year actually that this happened, this case. And so now that you are all in an exclusive group of RPA-Cube experts by now, after this short hour, I just wanted to give you the visual and ask you, what do you notice here? Are there some things that stand out? Feel free to unmute, by the way, if you'd like to.
Please speak up.
I think the
Yeah,
dark
okay.
green one is in the left picture. It's very low.
Exactly.
What I thought it was that in the S curve, it shouldn't be on this position. If I understood it well.
Yeah, so the yellow side of the RPA-Cube and also the AIM-Cube is exploration, and the green side is optimization. So the AIM-Cube or RPA-Cube is always a mirror image of the growth curve or the S curve.
But what I
So,
mean is, it's the specialist position on the bottom in this cube on the left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doesn't correspond with the position on the S curve, I think.
So the only dimension you see on the S curve is the exploration dimension. Yes, so the managing complexity dimension, the vertical dimension, is missing from the S curve, that's correct. But you're right in saying that this green pillar stands out from all the rest, both in its place on the S curve, so on the exploration dimension, but also in terms of its height, as a more of a specialist contribution rather than generalist or halfway sort of generalist, as you see the others are. Does anyone else have a comment of what stands out? I believe there's one more important, maybe two, but I'll leave it up to you. Anyone else? If we take as a rule of thumb that ideally we would have 5 to 7 result areas for a given role, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then this is quite a stretch for one person to take on all these result areas. So in order to fully define this role, we came up, or together with the company, in an iterative process, we came up with 9 result areas, and we could not narrow it down. So that says already quite a lot, I think. And then you also see the spread. So ideally, the job would be sort of one person's contribution maybe in a single sort of quadrant, so 4 squares on the floor of the AIM-Cube RPA-Cube. And here you see it already extends quite a bit. There's quite a bit of a spread. So whereas in the talk so far, maybe we focused a lot on recruitment, how to get the right people into your organization for a given role. But in this instance, you can see that it's also applied to existing jobs. So in this case, it was to reassess a role. Can you go to the next slide for me, Richard? And the problem here was that there was a very high staff turnover in this role, both in terms of people moving on to the next role as soon as they got the opportunity to do so, to spend as little time as possible in this role, which is a big red flag. And then also the pressure of this role resulting in a series of burnouts. So this was a very serious issue, not just on a human level, you know, that it jeopardizes the health and happiness of these employees, of these people, but it's also, of course, a very costly problem for the company. And the thing I want to focus on for this particular case, or the thing I want to stress very much, is that it's a piece of the puzzle. So as Richard said, don't throw your job profiles out the window, or not even invite the person to come and sit for an interview, for example. If you have the result areas and you have their AIM-Cube profile, it's always in the context of the organization, of this individual. That's something I really would like to stress, because in this case, we found out that actually even without knowing what the specific descriptions were of the result areas, or are in this case, I'm not showing you even, there's a lot you can tell already. And we, in addition to the questionnaires and these data visualizations and the debriefs and the advisory reports, we also conducted interviews with some of these people in this role. And interestingly enough, one of the words, or a few of the words that they used to describe themselves, were we are all round, we have a lot of different hats on, we are chameleons, we are centipedes. And it was very interesting to put the data visualization in the context of these interviews and the context of the discussions we had with the company, kind of problems they were encountering in this role, and what they heard from their employees, to put that all into the mix. And you can tell, even if you read their description, chameleons or centipedes, you can see, yes, there is a pressure there to perform in very different places at once, and to contribute in that way. And so the 9 result areas also, of course, indicate that there's a big spread, and there's 9 of them, which is incredible. And then finally, what stands out, of course, as you said, Janneke, already, is that little green pillar. And that had to do with their administrative tasks. So they were very much, as you can see, the most of the result areas are on the people side of the spectrum. And they were very much in an integrative role, connecting many different people internally, externally. That was a big part of their role. And then there was this one part where they had to do administrative tasks. They had to do, clock hours and prepare invoices and those kind of things. So very focused on the administrative part. And that was also, at the same time, the most visible part of the role, because how they engaged with clients, it was not necessarily as visible as the numbers that appeared for the company at the end of the year, so to say. But this was also most outside of their comfort zone. So there's a sort of double entendre here, where we have not only were they forced to focus on that, not only was that part of their role, it was also the most visible part of their role for the company. And that was also, how they were judged in a way. So that was a double kind of issue there. And so immediately, one of the first things that happened when the company saw this result, saw this RPA-Cube, they said, oh, well, we immediately know where the administrative tasks go. I have an idea already, we're taking it out of this role. And it would still stretch someone in this role, so we should still reevaluate, see what we can do. Maybe in terms of support, it can also be another way to help people along in the role, not leave them struggling, for example. So in terms of support, but also in terms of reevaluating the result areas of this role. And they immediately took away the administrative tasks and gave it to the back office, basically. So I think this is a really nice example of how not only you can immediately see, and everyone can see in the company, it's not a gut feeling anymore, or it's not an emotional feeling anymore. It's there, it's visualized. That really helped to say, well, this is the data that we can use to go and make this role better for these people. I don't have actual data yet on how they then improved the role and what the consequences were for people moving on in this role, because that's just too short of a term. But I think this explains a lot already. Does anyone have any questions as we're coming to the end? It's 5 o'clock, to the end of this presentation about our RPA-Cube.
Perfect. Yes.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks, Harry.
I will take the final 30 seconds to wrap things up. here. So with some brief takeaways, when it comes to finding talent, the key thing here is to focus on what matters, which is the results that need to be delivered. Look at integrity, of course, first, then skills and experience of the candidate, but finally that performance profile. When writing that function profile, make sure that everyone is talking about the same deliverables. Then make sure to align the candidate's preferences with the results that need to be delivered. All right, so make sure you align those candidates' preferences with the results that need to be delivered. The RPA-Cube offers a model, offers a concept to help you visualize and discuss these required result areas. Write better function profiles and then connect these to the in-Cube profiles of the candidates. All right. And with that, we come indeed to the end of today's webinar. Any final round, any questions at this point?
Well, Richard, just one, a short one.
Yeah.
Can you also use this this tool for outplacement? So
Yes.
that you
Can you give an example?
Well, for instance, if a company likes to divide, or let's say a company and an employee are going different roads, the company offers him an outplacement project, and then you can use, of course, the in-Cube by showing what the skills, or let's say what the talent of the person is, but also in what jobs he would fit easily.
Great question. Yes, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can think with the candidate, you can study different function profiles for these different positions, help them identify the result areas, and then enable or get into the discussion where that candidate will be most, will flourish best. So yes, the answer is complete. Yes, for sure. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
if there are no further questions, then I think we will wrap things up. Marjan, you will send the follow-up, including the recording, the slides, and some information on the RPA-Cube as a tool and the certification training in October for those of you who might be interested. And otherwise, of course, as always, feel free to look us up for more information.
Yes,
thank you very much.
you. Have a nice evening. The certification training is indeed on the 13th of October. And if you still have any questions following this webinar, then just send us an email and we'll get back to you personally.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janneke. Thank you for joining today.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.